Alright, welcome back guys to another Rainbow Six extraction operator video, and today we're going to be going over Rook, which is the other GIGN operator that we have access to outside of dock, and I already did a video over him prior to this one, so if you guys want to go check him out, go ahead. And what I'm going to be doing is, for this one, I'm going to be staying in the main menu while describing everything for Rook, because he already has like a massive arsenal with 5 primaries and 2 secondaries to go over, and going over all the attachments and stuff is going to be taking up a large amount of runtime, and I don't want this video to be, over an hour long, so we won't keep it to the main menu, and I'll just kind of describe on how he's going to be working. So let's go ahead and start off with the primaries. And for the very first one, you'll have access to is the P90. It is definitely one of my most favorite SMGs in the game, but it's also very weird on how it works in an odd sense. So, not just from the actual design for it, or the actual like shape of the gun, it's actually really cool looking. Uh, but it's very odd. So the damage, it doesn't really hit very hard by default. It only does 22 damage. With the suppressor, it only does 13. Now, the only other gun that does low or just as low amount of damage with the suppressor is the Scorpion Evo. And if you guys already know, technically it has a real low rate of real low damage, but it has like 1,000 rounds per minute, or the highest rate of fire gun, or rate of fire from all the other guns in the game, outside of like secondary SMGs or anything like that. So it can technically get away with real low damage because it has such a fast fire rate. So the P90 is in a weird middle ground, and I'll be going over why that is. So again, it has a suppressor and it drops down its damage to a very pitiful 13 damage. And it'll also have a muzzle brake to help you out with the first 2 to 3 shots of your weapon when you're firing, despite it saying, a single shot firing for the actual description. So that is something to keep in mind. So one thing I do want to go over is the barrels. You either have the option of having none. You don't need to run anything on there if you don't want to. Um, but yeah, the suppressor, usually that's going to be on every single gun except for a select few shotguns and LMGs. You have an extended barrel, which is a fairly rare attachment on most guns. They're normally not found on SMGs. You can find one on the assault rifle of Capiteo and probably other ones, but I can't really think of any on the top of my head. But yeah, it's actually a really solid gun, or a really solid attachment for this gun, because it'll actually extend the effective damage range to being on par with assault rifles. And this is actually really solid. I normally run this because, as you can see here, for the actual recoil pattern for the gun, and this is using no recoil helping attachments, you can see it almost goes straight up until you actually get to the orange or red part, or the later on part of your recoil. And that's when it kind of has a little bit more spread and side-to-side bounce. But for the most part, the first like blue and yellow section is almost straight up. So you'll be able to land several shots really quickly with its high rate of fire of 970 rounds. And that's a pretty solid rate of fire right there. So it would feel like you're melting people pretty dang quickly despite it having such a low damage. The capacity is actually really forgiving for your gun as well. If you're missing all those shots, it has a capacity of 50, which is a real solid deal for this gun. So overall, it's really melty for having a real fast rate of fire, but also having real low recoil and decent damage, I would say, or a little bit on the lower end, but fairly decent damage for SMGs. So it's not going to have the stopping power of an assault rifle. It's just not its class. But all around, it's supposed to be more like the Scorpion, of shooting really fast, not really hitting very hard, but it's supposed to be a lot more laser beam and longer range suited, uh, which is all around really solid. So you'll have that going. The sights on here is going to be the normal reflex sight, the normal red dot, the weird futuristic looking holographic, or more modern holographic, I guess, and the 1.5 times scope. I kind of run that one on all my guns. Just solid scoping overall, and I actually like the look pretty well. It doesn't have a underbarrel grip, so it doesn't have the vertical or angled grip on there, so it is limited to that, but you don't really need those because the recoil is already fine. It's already laser accurate. So overall, not really a bad option for an SMG. It's very weird, and it is somewhat flexible in a lot of situations. Going down, we'll have the MP5, and this one is a pretty solid SMG. You can't really go wrong. It feels pretty solid and well handling all around. It does a little bit extra damage at 27 damage by default, and a 16 damage with a suppressor. So it doesn't really hit very hard with the suppressor, obviously, since it's taking away more firepower out of your gun there. It does have a solid rate of fire of 800. Most SMGs will shoot well over 700 rounds, up to 800 or 800 rounds or more. So that's pretty in the ballpark. But unlike the P90 here, the gun doesn't really have a wide selection of muzzle attachments like the extended barrel or anything. It has a suppressor and the muzzle brake, which will help you for your first 2 to 3 shots of your weapon. And the bit of a drawbacks on this, even though it does have a little bit more damage, I think it'll make it to where it's like a one-shot difference. It will have a lower rate of fire, a capacity of 30 instead of the 50 like the P90, and its actual recoil is a lot more side-to-side bounce when it gets into higher areas of recoil patterns. So as you can see, it's a lot less accurate, so it is supposed to be more playing to real close quarters, and you can't really stretch out ranges like you can with the P90, thus making the P90 a little bit more flexible in other areas. So this is really good, and it feels really great up close, and it's actual, set area where it's supposed to be played really well in. But outside of that, it's not really the greatest. It doesn't really stand out in any kind of crazy way. Again, that doesn't make it bad though. For the sights, you have the normal reflex, normal red dot, modern kind of holographic, the 1.5 times zoom, and you also have the 2 times zoom. So you technically can get a little bit of a better, longer range like picture or sight picture than you would with like the P90, because it does have a 2 times scope option to it. That is only a 0.5 times zoom more than the 1.5, so it does really help you a whole lot. And I can't really find any kind of situations where that little bit of a bridge between a 0.5 times zoom would have really changed any kind of difference between this and the P90. On the barrel, you only have one option, and this is the vertical grip. It just helps you out with recoil on there. So I'll run the reflex, or that's what I'm running now, or 1.5 times. That's either one's really up to you. The muzzle brake being the only attachment to help you out with recoil, so I might as well run it, and a vertical grip. So again, all around solid SMG. Donk uses it too. It feels good. It hits pretty decent. It just doesn't have the real laser beam accurate P90 kind of setup for it. But after that, we'll go into one of the better weapons, and like I said in Doc's video, this is probably one of the statistically better weapons in the game. So it's actually really solid, especially for the Maelstrom protocol or the ranked version or ranked mode for this game. And this is the HK417 DMR. And it's really solid because it does a real nice default damage of 69. Nice. And with the barrel or with the suppressor, it will do 41 damage. It will still hit like a truck, so it's going to be 3 shots to kill enemies unless you hit them in the head or any kind of weak spot. And you'll be able to drop them real fast. So suppressors, you can absolutely run. You don't really lose any kind of massive stopping power with it. So it is real flexible if you want to run it stealthy. And you also have the muzzle brake, which I run on there because I have to run the 69 damage on there. And the muzzle brake does follow up on shots better and makes it to where it's absolutely devastating with that kind of high damage. Has the second fastest fire rate outside of the EBR 14 DMR in the game. And the EBR 14 has a larger magazine capacity of like 30, I think, and it will shoot faster, but it does less damage than the HK417. So this is more of like the harder hitting, slower firing, but it has a very small difference in the actual fire rate. I mean, it's noticeable, but it's still very fast, so you wouldn't really see like a massive difference between them. Outside of that though, for it being a DMR, it actually has a massive selection of sights. So you go from the default reflex to the default holographic, 2.5 times zoom scope or the ACOG scope. You have the default red dot sight, the 1.5 times zoom, the 2.5 times zoom, and the exclusive to only DMR's 3 times zoom. scope on here. So a lot of times, like I always say in most of my videos, that usually you won't really need to use the 2x or 3x zoom scope, because how the maps are made right now, and just for all the mechanics to be working around it, a bunch of nests and stuff around in certain areas, like when they are alerted by enemies, all of them are, shooting off at once. They need to be fairly close for the actual howl or alert circle to be able to hit them and activate all those. So the maps are kind of made to be more close quarters, so I'd usually run a real low zoom optic, 1.5 or maybe a 2x zoom, which is going to be about as far as I'm going to be going with it for longer ranges. So when you're aiming in on an enemy, you don't zoom like really far into a wall if you need to quickly like uh, flick over to them or anything. It's just going to be way too much zoom in such a short area or close quarters area. After this, though, it does have a grip, and it has the vertical grip on there as your only option, so might as well go ahead and run it. This will make it to where that the recoil is actually below the graph chart here in the little white line, as you can see there in the recoil pattern. So it's actually really solid. And overall, this is a great gun. It feels really good. It doesn't move a muscle, especially when you put on the two uh, recoil helping attachments. It really just doesn't move at all. And that 69 damage being meme worthy, and is also very much devastating. So absolutely amazing option, and I actually like the standard black color for the default here. It looks pretty dang clean, so really solid gun. And we go down to the SG CQB shotgun. This one's really cool. If you guys use this in Rainbow Six Siege, you know that's a pump action that has a bit of a faster fire rate than all the other shotguns that are also pump action, while keeping a massive amount of damage. So it's actually one of the shotguns that has the most amount of damage in the game. At 53, it only beats out the SAS or the Sausage 12 semi-automatic gun by only 3 damage, and that one has 50. So but it has a way closer or way shorter effective damage range. So this one is a good in-between kind of deal. It does have a capacity of 7 though, or 8 if you count the one that's already in the barrel, or in the chamber, I guess, and the barrel. So it's overall really good. The shotgun isn't suppressor compatible, so it doesn't have a suppressor option or any kind of muzzle brake or muzzle attachment at all for an option, most like every other shotgun in the game. However, with every single shotgun, unless you're using one that shoots slugs, which are a very select few of them are actually having slug rounds that could be fired out. But most shotguns will be used more for utility rather than lethality, even though you are able to get a one-shot kill on just about every single enemy in this game if they're right on top of you, because the shotguns are real close range effectiveness. And it's really good for clearing out massive areas of sprawl just because of the spread of the gun, and you're also is able to shoot out massive holes in walls, so you're able to get through. I think you can also fairly destroy the super barricade doors that kind of like log down when you press the little touchpad on there to log down doors, so you can break that if you want to and put down a destructible barricade so you can shoot through it later on for defending. So it's a bit of a really cool strat I learned. So overall, it's more for utility rather than stealth, and shotguns absolutely have a place in that if you want to have more utility with you, but it's a go loud only option if you do run this, so that is one thing to keep in mind there. After this, we finally get down to his very last primary, and this is the V308 assault rifle. It's a Vector platform, or the Vector body, or for the normal SMG that shoots a 45 ACP round normally, which is a bit hard, I think more harder hitting than the 9mm, but I can be wrong. I'm not a weapons expert, but I think it does hit a little bit harder than 9mm. But anyway, this is shooting out 308 rounds, which is really cool. That's why it's V308. It's actually a really solid gun. This one comes down to being like overall just really good. But of course, with that, it has to be one of the last guns in the entire game. So, of course, it being a Vector has a bit of an extended barrel and it looks more like an assault rifle. This gun is overall really solid. It has a fairly solid fire rate at 700, unlike, like the 11,000, not 11,000, the 1,000 something rounds per minute that the normal Vector has. So it is fairly slower fire rate, but it's not extremely slow. So it is a little bit more forgiving if you're missing shots somehow. And the damage is actually really solid at 44 by default. With a suppressor, it's still 26. So you're still able to get out a pretty good solid punch out of the suppressor, or running while running the suppressor. Yeah, the compensator and then the muzzle brake. Now for this kind of gun, I do recommend a bit of a different play style or a bit of a different build. So normally, with it being an automatic gun, you would want to run the compensator, and it helps you out for that. So these two attachments work in different ways. I'll go ahead and explain them again over this. The muzzle brake helps out with the first two sections of your recoil control. So your first 3 to 6 shots of your weapon. So that's going to be affecting the yellow or the blue area and the yellow area. So as you can see here with the compensator, you can see the blue and yellow area is fairly spread out. They're obviously a lot smaller than the orange and red. It gets more and more inaccurate the longer you're firing or constant firing. You put on the muzzle brake here, you can see that they're actually a little bit lower and also way tighter put together. So it actually helps out with the first two, or the first like grouping of shots in the recoil patterns before you reach to the higher areas of your recoil, which is going to be the orange and red area. The compensator helps out more of the orange and red area. As you can see, it kind of tightens out the horizontal spread by a pretty good amount, but overall makes it to where it still has a pretty good amount of spread. So overall, I think the muzzle brake will help a lot more, and you don't really need to worry about the massive constant overall recoil anyway, because this gun does shoot at a 700 rate of fire, so it's slow enough to still be fairly fast shooting, but it's also slow enough to be able to keep up your recoil, or have way better recoil control, or fairly manageable recoil control, while still shooting fast enough and feeling really good while you're doing it. So it's a good sweet middle ground in the fire rate here. And of course, we'll put the cherry on top with a 50 round capacity for the magazine, and you can't really go wrong with that at all. So it's absolutely an amazing option. Sights will have the normal reflex, the normal holographic, the ACOG scope or 2.5 times scope, the red dot, and the 2 times scope on there. So I just run the red dot on there. It takes up as little space on the screen at a time, and actually has, in my opinion, a better reticle than the reflex, because I don't like looking at a green triangle. I can sometimes blend in with certain backgrounds or environments. So I just run the red dot when you have a real clear, red dot or reticle in the middle of your screen. So I'll be running that on there, and again, that takes up as little space on the screen as possible, so you can see more around you. So you could probably see the enemy running up on you from your right when you're not looking, or if you weren't paying attention. And at the very bottom one here, it will actually have two of the only grip options in the game right now, which is the vertical grip. Just helps you out with the recoil more. You also have the angle grip. So again, with this gun, for it having a low rate of fire but still fast enough to still feel good, you're still able to control the recoil pretty well. So technically, you don't need to run the vertical grip, especially if you already have the muzzle brake attached on there. So your first 6 shots will be all right for your gun. And so really, I would actually recommend running the angle grip, so you're able to aim down sight a lot faster. And I think this is the old angle grip programming, so it's not the nerfed version that's like in Rainbow Six Siege. So you actually do aim down sights faster, and it's actually noticeable. So you don't need to worry about things being nerfed into the dang ground over and over again. So overall, it's like I said, a bit of a different build. So it's a lot more snappier, and you actually keep up your recoil control really well, so it's almost laser beam accurate. And great gun, but you have to be, on level 9 in order to unlock it, so have fun doing that. So there we go, that's his primary weapons, and that took a very long time to go through. So we're going to follow up on his secondaries real quick. We have the Revolver, does 78 damage for a really solid amount of damage. But only has a capacity of 6 rounds in the cylinder, and it has no actual attachment selection. You can put on a skin on there, but there's no attachment selection, so you can't run any kind of scopes or anything to help you out with a better sight picture for longer ranges. It is more or less like a really hard-hitting pocket sniper, but there's no customization to really make it to where you can get the most out of its strength. So all around, it seems like a pretty solid or kind of a weird meme or a hard-hitting kind of gun. I mean, you can get some type of use out of it, but all around, I think I would rather use a P9 secondary or the normal 9mm handgun. I think it's one of the harder hitting handguns in the game at 45 damage by default, 27 with a suppressor. 9 times out of 10 I'll be running my secondaries with a suppressor, so there's going to be very rare times where I'd actually never have a suppressor on my gun. But if you don't want to run that, you can run the muzzle brake, helps out recoil control. Handguns are very easy to control by default, so that I don't think you would really be seeing much of a difference anyway. The capacity is actually really solid at 16 rounds, or 17 if you count the one in the chamber. And all around, I'll be running this way more because I actually like the default look to it, and it's a really solid handgun overall. So there we go, that's his arsenal. Very extensive, so you have plenty to play around with while you're leveling them up, so you can't really ever get bored with them until you get to, like, level 10, and so when you actually complete them. But after that, now we go into the more interesting part, and this is going to be the advancements going through level 1 through 10, and his main gadget and his passive ability. So his stats first, he's going to be a 3-speed, 4 armor operator, so he's in a bit of a middle of the road for both ends, even though his ability will be able to make it to where he's a little bit on the more chunkier side when it comes to damage reduction. But this makes it to where that he's more on the chunkier damage reduction kind of upfront and personal kind of guy, while also keeping a pretty decent amount of speed. He's not the fastest, but he is not the slowest either, compared to Doc, which is like a 2-speed at max level, so that is something to keep in mind. He is a little bit better in that category, which is pretty dang solid. So let's go ahead and jump in with his actual gadget as well. So he has an armor pack, drops a pack of armor plates for the team, granting damage resistance. Anyone wearing the armor always falls to down or downed instead of KO. So what this is essentially a more extensive version of the body armor. So as you can see here, always fall to down but not out while wearing body armor, reduces incoming damage by 20%, lose body armor when downed. And essentially what Rook is the stronger version of this equipment. So what I'm thinking right now, what they're doing at the moment is having a bunch of operators run certain things in the game that actually help them out, or all these like gear pieces and stuff like that, or equipment, are all kind of going off of a weird similar deal, like other operators abilities, but they're in like a weird lesser degree or lesser version of it, so they always have their trade-offs, while there's always going to be a reason actually bringing the full real deal gadget from the operator, opposed to actually bringing the secondary one, but it can fill in a role that you're kind of lacking in if you need it. So it's like stuff like the anabolic accelerant. You use this and you'll slowly revive or heal yourself back up to 50% health or 50 health. So it's kind of like Doc, but there's a limit to it. Or you have the revive kit, where you can technically revive like Doc if you're down on the ground or Fink or anything like that, and you can pick yourself up, but it's only a one-time use. Stuff like that. Or you can have the recon drone, which is technically a bit of a mix of IQ and pulse in one. So you have body armor with this, which is going to be a lot like Rook. So one thing to note here, I want to go ahead and say now that the body armor does not stack with Rook armor. You'll actually see this when, if you have a little bottom icon when you're in game, it'll show your teammates like a little operators and their health and such, and you'll actually see like a little shield icon next to their operator picture there, or profile, and it'll let you know that those people are wearing armor, and it'll either be shown if they're already carrying armor from their actual gear in, or if they're actually wearing Rook armor. So you cannot stack these two on top of each other. I wish that actually did happen, so you'd be, like a 6 armor operator, so you'd be like almost invincible, but no, that's not the case, unfortunately. But he is a bit different in a bunch of different ways. So armor pack, you just put it down on the ground. Take it. You put it on. So after that, you actually get your self-damage reduction when you put that on there. So all this does is make it to where any operator that puts it on will move up one stat or one section of their armor resistance, I guess, or damage resistance. So if they're like a 4 armor, they're going to be bumped up to a 5 armor or anything like that. So that's all it really does. And it makes it to where that if they are wearing this damage, not wearing this damage, I'll just seen that, or if they are wearing this armor, they will always go to a down but not out state. So always make sure your teammates are always well supplied with this, and they will always go down and give you a chance to be able to pick them back up. Now you have armored up. So Rook and VIPs have an armor plate applied by default. So what I think this means, I'm not really sure what VIPs is for this, Rook and VIPs. I think that means either your operators with you or your teammates by default will already have this on. Actually, I don't think that's really the case because there's been a lot of times where I haven't seen this, so I think it's actually more of the VIP asset or the hostage rescue they would normally do when you need to save your asset. If you are running Rook, that person, if it comes up in your weird or like all your objectives and stuff, they will automatically be applied with Rook armor on level 2, or if you get them up to level 2. So it's a little bit handy when you're doing that, but that's pretty specific and very situational, I guess. So, I mean, it's an upgrade overall. You can't really go wrong with it. The arts or level 3, you get yourself an arsenal update. You get yourself the MP5 submachine gun and the P9 handgun. You have armor 4, so incoming damage reduced by 30%. That's armor just for his actual stat, not his actual gear piece. Gear up. This is a passive ability, and he carries 1 additional react explosive. So you can set up extra claymores or anything. So he's more or less supposed to be keeping your teammates alive, being a bit of a support operator while also being a little bit more of a defensive one as well. So he has a bit of a more like anchor defensive operator you could be setting up. Arsenal update, you get yourself the HK417 marksman rifle and the SG-CQB shotgun. You have trauma plates. So armor damage resistance increased to 30%. So this is one thing that it does have over the normal armor plates that I talked about in the gear section. The normal armor plates will only reduce 20% damage. This will make it to where then actually reduces 30% damage. So you do get a 10% buff over the normal gear that you can use. So this is what I mean. Like, he does have a bit of a jump when it comes to having a better option for armors. And you can also, every time you have a ability recharge or a refill that you're able to find around the map, so you get all your armor plates back, so you can resupply them a second time if all your teammates have them. Now, normal armor plates, you don't get that. Speed 3, you have movement speed increased by 25%, or you just go up to speed 3. And the arsenal update, you get yourself the V308 assault rifle, and in level 10, an armor plate is automatically applied to Rook when revived, so every time he gets picked back up after being revived, you will have an armor plate already on. And damage resistance increased to 40%, so now you have 20% extra increase to resistance, so you will make it to where it is up to a 5 armor when you put this on. And again, that's way better than the actual normal armor piece. So now you have a 20% increase over that normal gear piece and carry in. If you really wanted to, again, like, you can't really stack them. So you can, however, hold on to these armor plates for later on. Or if you have a ability to recharge, you can hold on to it for a good while. You can just use the standard armor plate while you have that. If you want to carry it into the game. And or the body armor, and when you go down, you get picked back up, and then you have that armor plate already default, like, automatically put back on you, and you go back down again, and then pick yourself back up again, and then put down your body armor pack for everyone to use, and then you can put that on so you can get down a third time, get back up, which is actually really solid. Or if you want to, you can just run a revive kit and do all that kind of stuff. So again, he's in this weird section to where you can technically cheese his gadget for almost repetitive revives over and over and over again. They can either be picked up by your teammates or picking up yourself, I guess. Or you can't really pick up yourself, but you can be picked up by teammates. But you can keep going down more consistently instead of just outright dying, which that is where he kind of loses when it comes to operators like Finka, Doc, or Sophia here. So he is in the kind of a weird boat, but a bit different like that. So all around, I mean, that's pretty much what he does. He's really great, all-arounder kind of operator. What I run with him, again, Revive Kit if you want to run that. Body armor, if you want to just keep on cheesing the down but not out deal, but to a lesser degree. Or an anabolic accelerant, really anything that you really want. You can do anything with him. He's a good all-around, like, middle ground kind of guy. For the actual explosives, I recommend just running something more defensive, since he is able to carry in a extra gear equipment, so you can actually just run in arc mines if you want to. And instead of carrying 2 arc mines at a time, you'll carry in 3 like the normal claymores. So you'll have that going for you, or you can carry in 4 claymores or 4 grenades, or 8 grenades or impact grenades if you want to run it. You can run the impact grenades and put on the explosive harness, and that'll make it to where that you're able to run 8 grenades right there. Actually, I think if I put that on, yeah, that'll make it to where you're able to run 8 grenades. So you can carry 4 impacts at a time. By default, put on the explosive harness, you can carry up to 7, plus the explosive piece that you get from the actual pass ability, so you're able to carry up to 8 impact grenades at a time. So impact grenades are actually really good to run with them if you want to start spamming stuff over and over again, so great option there. But overall, yeah, I think he's a really good supportive operator. And he actually does a lot more than the normal body armor would if you put that on there, so he really is just a greater degree to that, and you can also keep putting it down to help out your teammates. Now, Doc does have like the weird infinite kind of revive thing. If you want to go into more detail for that, or if you want to see more into detail for him, you can watch the video before where I cover him, and you'll see why. But I think Doc might have a little bit more of a weird, like, cheesy kind of way of just keep on reviving yourself over and over again, and so he has a little bit more flexibility when it comes to actual, like, a lot of use with your gadget. But again, he is a lot slower at only being a 2-speed 4 armor, so he's not really the greatest when it comes to movement speed, while Rook obviously beats him out in that kind of category, and he also bumps himself up to a 5 armor with the armor pack, actually a little bit above 5 armor. So overall, great operator. Tell me what you guys think about him down in the comments. I know this one's going to be a little bit more lengthier than the other ones because he just has such a massive arsenal and a couple of things to be talking about. But aside from that, thank you guys for watching. I'll see y'all in the next one.